What does it mean to be an old soul? It feels like a loaded phrase, or a secret way of saying something else. A way of saying that you're a very sad person, or a lonely person, an anxious person, or a warrior. And children who are old souls seem to have the weight of the world on their shoulders, lying awake at night imagining all the bad things that could happen, or worrying about loan sharks and being bad at maths. Sometimes it feels like a prediction, that you're being condemned to a certain kind of life, of being burdened by knowing something you shouldn't. A compliment and an insult, a blessing and a curse. The origin of this phrase is somewhat ambiguous. It loosely traces back to an old Chinese belief, and its roots can also be seen in many other religions, all with similar ideas about reincarnation and some people being stuck with an old soul that gives them a kind of knowledge or level of introspection that can only have accumulated over many different lifetimes, making them wise beyond their years. Someone called Preston on Tumblr said that old souls are created in the afterlife, in a realm called the world without ego. Another person on Reddit said that the term is, quote, an egotistical concept and over-exaggerated way for people to unfairly place themselves above others. Each to their own. I had never given the concept too much thought. That was until last night, when I watched a film called Janet Planet. The film follows a mother and her daughter, Janet and Lacey, over one summer in their life. They live in a beautiful quiet house in a forest, one that is filled with visitors and the people that drift in and out of Janet's life, with Lacey quietly orbiting around her mother and the world that she's created, the Janet Planet. It creates this wash of a mood that I've never experienced before, capturing the unique feeling of being a child with an old soul, more comfortable in the world of grown-ups, content but lonely, happy but deeply sad. Lacey rarely interacts with anyone her own age, and most of the time she's either playing alone and listening to the tune of a wind-up jukebox, or listening to the introspective conversations that the adults around her are having, intently observing, mostly silent, the cogs in her brain whirring as she tries to make sense of a bigger question. It captures this slightly dark nostalgia of looking back and realising that something just outside of your understanding was happening, but with the idea that Lacey understands something deeper about these moments. A feeling that rubs off on her that she can't yet articulate, like being sunburnt without noticing or crying at a film you don't understand. It's like being vaguely aware of something that you know is complicated and grown up, even if you don't understand the specifics. It's like a memory of hearing hushed tones or whispers as adults talk about something you shouldn't hear, but you listen anyway because you want to understand, to be a part of the club because you don't feel like you belong to the one you're supposed to be in. It's the memory of seeing someone cry, only you don't fully realise because they were trying to hide it, but you remember a sniff or someone's shoulders moving in a strange and exaggerated way. Maybe you were surprised at seeing someone express this sadness, and you wonder what caused it, but you don't have the experiences to imagine what it could possibly be. It's not understanding the concept of money, but remembering small moments that hint at unspoken worries about the cost of everything. But you just thought your parents were being grumpy for not buying multi-packs of tiny cereal boxes or those weird school shoes with dolls in the heels. Janet Planet captures this feeling of being a kid that feels too old to be young, like childhood doesn't suit Lacey and she's trying to understand something that will bring her closer to the adult world, because childhood somehow feels self-indulgent or pointless, like she knows something about the world that feels too important to shake away. Children who are old souls tend to prefer spending time with grown-ups, or maybe you weren't accepted by people your age, so you had no choice. I also didn't have many friends as a kid, and I only really thought about this yesterday, but I always seemed to spend more time with my parents' friends. I'm not sure if they did this out of pity because they knew I was slightly sad or whether they genuinely enjoyed my company, but I remember my mum's friend Judith taking me to the Writers' Museum because she knew I wanted to be a writer, and she bought me a fossil of some dinosaur poo and I can't remember why. I went for breakfast with their friend Julie. I went to art galleries with their friend Sarah, who asked me questions about how the paintings made me feel. I went for coffee with Jeanette, who would tell me about the pains in her joints, the cost of seeing a physiotherapist after a hip replacement, what it's like to have your first child at 19. Lacey listens to conversations with her mum's boyfriend Larry, but he doesn't offer much to her besides reluctant one-word answers and a barely disguisable tolerance. Regina stays with them for a while, and she listens to her and her mother's conversations about womanhood, self-love and acceptance. She listens as they try to articulate complex feelings about love, identity, regret and childhood. She asks questions about being a grown-up, about responsibility, about the future. She knows she doesn't have friends her age, but it doesn't feel like a problem, because she has all these interesting people to talk to who treat her like a real person. When you don't interact with many people your age, it takes away this youthful optimism you have about the world, which is both a privilege to be able to learn from so many interesting adults who take you seriously enough to entertain your questions and not dismiss your perspective, but it also adds to the oldness of your soul. You're always labelled as shy, which makes you feel self-conscious because being quiet on the outside doesn't reflect what's happening inside. It makes you feel as if people think you have nothing to say, when in fact you have lots to say, but you don't know how to say it. An old soul is someone with a big question within themselves, having an older person's melancholia or way of viewing the world, creating a weight in you where you feel like you're seeing more than you should and it will be significant one day. It's a heaviness that seems to come from an unidentifiable sadness. And after thinking about other old souls in movies, I realised that this label is often a coded way of saying many other things. An old soul might just be someone that is queer but doesn't know it yet, a sense of looming discovery, a path that has been trodden by others many times before, adding a weight to their soul in the knowledge that this is a journey they will one day make. In characters like Owen in I Saw the TV Glow, Therese and Carol, Frankie and Beach Rats, or Tyrone in Moonlight, their sense of being an old soul at the start of the film comes from the idea that they have a life within them that hasn't been expressed, a voice or authenticity that lies awake at night and asks them questions. Who could I be? Who am I supposed to be? It makes them heavy with the weight of possibility, an alternate life, giving them an older soul. Sometimes an old soul is just someone who is depressed or deeply empathetic, becoming saddened by the world's problems and the moral apathy towards them. We see this with Jessica in Memoria, someone so haunted by her ability to tune into the pain of other people that she feels the sounds and echoes of things that happened a long time ago, connected to a collective subconscious world of experiences that makes her life feel dense with feeling. A metal thud that keeps her awake at night. Or someone like Conrad from Ordinary People, who has been aged by the adults around him and their inability to deal with what's happening to them, becoming heavy with the sadness that is ignored by the people who share it, isolated in his grief. Adults who are old souls can often become lost souls, and I think it's easy for the two to become entangled. Old souls become aged from the weight of unanswered questions or sadness within them, and it makes sense that these questions would eventually lead to more puzzles, a confusion that creates a feeling of overwhelmingness and sense of being lost, a web in the maze that eventually slows you down. In Oslo, August 31st, Anders is someone whose old soul became lost as a result of having lived many different lives, and is now unsure whether he wants to live another one, overwhelmed by the prospect of moving forward, of forgiving himself and forging a new path, scared by the possibilities and of making another mistake. It's both a blessing and a curse. But Janet Planet does not explore this particular feeling. Janet Planet is about being an old soul as a child, a feeling that you won't be surprised by the darkness in the world when it reveals itself to you, because it's always been sitting there, slowly unfolding. You wait for your turn to grow up, knowing that being young is just a temporary stage, so you don't worry too much about how it makes you feel. Instead, you worry about everything else, waiting until it makes sense, and hoping that when it does, you'll finally feel young.
Welcome to you, both young and old.